Welcome to Irish Passport.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the Irish Passport.
I'm Tim McInerney.
I'm Naomi O'Leary.
We're friends.
Okay, well to Naomi.
Anwar Fad Tim.
This is your passport to Irish culture, history and politics. I'm recording.
One,
two,
three. Okay. Nollaig, Nollaig, then a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to all our listeners all around the world to the Irish Passport podcast. We're back.
Hi everybody. Today we're bringing you a mini bonus Nollaig episode, all thanks to Liam, who is a supporter over on Patreon.
Yes, thanks a million, Liam. Liam sent in a suggestion, actually, which was for one of our exclusive Patreon-only listener question episodes that we publish over on Patreon. And in those episodes, we discuss topics that are sent in to us by our Patreon supporters. But this one was so important, Naomi. It really was this was of grave importance. So much so that we thought we better publish it on Main and at this time of year as well. Thank you, Liam, for drawing attention to this. I think this is probably the biggest news story to dominate the Irish media circuit at this time of year. Maybe you agree, Naomi?
I would say, Tim, that this one is bigger than politics. It's bigger than anything, really, because we are talking about one of the most important discussions of each year, which is the reporting on the logistics of Santa's annual visit, which takes place every year in the Irish Parliament, the Dáil.
Yeah, and I don't know how familiar international listeners might be about this, because I think, now I don't know, but I think that the Irish government is particularly transparent about its dealings with the logistics of what goes on with Santa's visit. I'm not sure if this happens every December in other countries so openly.
I don't know if there's a public discussion about it. Yeah,
I mean, I like that now about our politicians, that they are so open about what's really going on. So, for instance, something very important that happens every year is that the Taoiseach usually announces the exact moment when they have granted access to Irish airspace to Santa and his team, so that Santa can make his deliveries as expected. So maybe we can take a little listen to that.
Let's hear it.
And I would like to confirm that Santa Claus has permission to enter Irish airspace and to cross our borders on December 24th through December 25th. And I want to thank IAA, Inish, Department of Agriculture and the Revenue Commissioners for allowing the necessary exemptions to occur.
So you can hear there, Naomi, that this is, it's on the agenda. Like, it makes me feel very proud that it's so high up on the agenda in the Dáil, right?
It is important. I mean, every household has got to be so excited for this visit. It's, it's what the people want.
Yeah, it's true. And they're following it. And, sometimes our politicians can be pretty lackluster in lots of ways, but this is something that they always seem to be up to speed with. This happens every year, by the way. I've got another clip here somewhere. So this one is from 2021. And this is from former Taoiseach Micheál Martin, who also let us know about the airspace issue back then.
We're just now 12 sleeps away from Christmas, and many children, having written their letters to Santa Taoiseach, are anxiously awaiting the arrival of Santa Claus. And I know Santa, Mrs. Claus and all the elves are very busy, making all the presents and the arrangements for them to be delivered across the world. Can the Taoiseach confirm that arrangements are in place for Santa and the reindeer to enter Irish airspace on Christmas Eve? Gurmagat.
Well, that's a very important.
A tough one for him on the last Taoiseach's questions.
Taoiseach, maybe you'd like to start with the last one first. You mightn't get time otherwise.
Well, I wish to confirm, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Santa will be facilitated in terms of access to Irish airspace. And our intelligence is that Santa will arrive duly on time for the children of our nation. They may rest assured of that. We may not guarantee a lot of other things, but we'll guarantee that most definitively.
But Naomi, there's loads of other contexts where Santa's visit actually becomes an item on the parliamentary agenda, right? Because, if you think about, let's say, weather conditions and all kinds of things that happen this time of year, things that affect airports. Yeah. I mean, I always have a problem with this, wondering whether going home to see my family around the Christmas period might be affected by the weather. That happens to lots of Irish people all over the world. So, of course, that might actually affect Santa as well. But one huge thing that came up, of course, was the pandemic back in 2020. Mm-hmm. So the government was absolutely all over that. So I got a clip here from 2020 where Simon Coveney at that point assured everyone just about what was going on with quarantine, for instance, because a lot of people couldn't leave even their county. So how on earth was Santa going to be crossing these quarantine borders? So...
Right. This was a time where there were like very specific small rules about every aspect of life. So I imagine there was a lot of anxiety about how Santa was going to manage his busy night. So yeah, we got a bit of reassurance at that time.
As Minister for Foreign Affairs, we've been working on the Santa Claus issue for a number of weeks now, and it's important to say to all children in the country that we regard Santa Claus's travels as essential travel for essential purposes, and therefore he is exempt from the need to self-quarantine for 14 days and should be able to come in and out of Irish airspace and indeed in and out of Irish homes without having to restrict his movement. But I am assured that children should not stay up at night because he does need to social distance. And so people need to keep at least 2 metres away at all stage to make sure that we keep him safe and indeed children as well. So he's exempt, he's coming, he's confirmed that, and he appreciates the fact that Ireland has ensured that in a very, very different Christmas in 2020, the visit of Santa Claus will be something that will remain consistent.
There can also, of course, be issues with supply, right? So in those years after the pandemic and after Brexit as well, there was issues with the supply chain, right? You can remind us of that, Naomi.
That's right, and a lot of disruption. Yeah, we had a fair bit of reporting on it in this podcast. I mean, it just caused enormous backlogs with shipping and things like that. And, you know, a lot of things were grounded. Then we had particularly a slowdown in manufacturing in China because there were a lot of severe restrictions there. And all sorts of, you know, odd after effects of that, which kind of continue, to be honest, to play out with our, you know, huge inflation that we had, which now seems to be slowing down. But yeah, it was an unusual period, let's say, with a lot of top-down management of the economy and stuff like that, where yeah, there were shortages. People might remember, with people making rushes on supermarkets and delays and things getting delivered. And yeah, at that time, of course, that was an issue that played into Santa's visit, and you know, whether everybody would get the toy that they wanted that Christmas.
This came up in the Dáil about the supply chain. I believe it was Fianna Fáil TD Christopher O'Sullivan who very candidly asked the Dáil about Santa's supply chain. Was it secure? Was everyone going to be able to get their gifts from Santa as usual that year? And here is what the government had to say.
Christopher O'Sullivan.
We're now at December 2nd and Christmas is in full swing. And as you'll be well aware, Taoiseach, Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus and his team of elves, they're absolutely flat out in their workshop in Lapland trying to make toys for the children of Ireland and also right across the globe. But you'll also be aware, Taoiseach, in your role as Minister with responsibility for trade, that there is an issue with the supply chain in Ireland and the UK and Europe and right across the globe. So, Taoiseach, I want you to reassure the children of Ireland that supply chain issue won't affect Santa Claus and his team in Lapland, and that we can secure a safe supply of goods and raw materials for Santa in his workshop so that him and his team can make toys for the children right across Ireland who have, for the most part, been absolutely excellent this year, and that they will have their toys on Christmas morning. Thank you.
Thank you for raising that important matter. Have you your own letter sent yet?
No, I haven't yet, Ceann Corla. Just in relation to the Deputy's question, I do want to give him an assurance and an assurance to the families and children of Ireland that this matter is in hand. Santa, his wife, his staff are fully vaccinated, will be exempt from any travel restrictions that have to be imposed between now and then. And my department, the Department of Trade, will leave no stone unturned and do absolutely everything we can to make sure that there's no disruption to supply chains or any kind of trade rules or issues that could disrupt the delivery of presents on Christmas Eve, which is now only 3 weeks away.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Taoiseach and Deputy.
Now, something else I really appreciate about this time of year is how closely the national broadcaster covers this. I mean, you see this every year, right, Naomi? You could tell me, as a journalist, how important is Santa's visit to Irish journalists?
I mean, I think, of course, it is a vital issue, like particularly for certain, I guess, readerships. And some journalists would be more, on the Santa beat, I would say, people dealing with consumer items or leisure, coming up with gifts ideas, things like that. So yeah, it's certainly it's a specialty for some journalists in particular. But I think there's something almost iconic about that time of the year when the national broadcaster RTE, addresses these topics in some of the kind of most prime time air broadcasting time that we have on radio and television, giving them their due prominence with so many children waiting to see what they'll have under the tree.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important. I mean, yes, a lot of this stuff is happening on the 9 o'clock news. A lot of kids are probably getting ready for bed at that point. It might be the last thing that you see, on the TV on Christmas Eve. So that is, it's important to just get that information in there before going for the big sleep, the biggest, most important sleep of the year. Now, there's lots of different aspects to this. So at some different points, we've seen some really interesting science being reported on RTE around all of this that happens at Christmas. So I was very interested in this one actually that I found from 2015, where RTE News. This was on RTE News. I believe it was the 9 o'clock news, where they interviewed some scientists from the University of Galway, my hometown, and they were explaining the science behind Rudolph's red nose, like what makes Rudolph's nose red. How does this actually work scientifically? Which I thought was such interesting, in-depth reporting. So let's take a quick listen to that.
Tonight's sleigh ride all over the world is guided by Rudolph. Scientists in Galway know why his nose is red. They analysed half-eaten carrots left behind last year for DNA and found genetic mutations are causing Rudolph's red nose.
We found that there's a mutation in Rudolph's nose that allows him to emit light. And there is a process in his nose, there's an enzyme that breaks down the compounds in carrots and that turns them into light. And that's what gives the red light or orange light to Rudolph's nose.
Santa makes a super fast journey around the world, and that journey is aided by physics.
Well, the thing is, we've worked out using the fundamental laws of physics that Santa must be travelling at about 5 million kilometres an hour. That is extremely fast. But luckily for us, it's not as fast as the speed of light. So that means we don't actually have to use Einstein's special theory of relativity. It's just normal Newtonian speeds that he's travelling at.
Then, of course, there's also the weather, like I mentioned, and usually, I think almost every year, the national weather forecasters, friendly, familiar faces on TV for most people who watch Irish TV, are going to give us a pretty solid, a pretty comprehensive lowdown of what the weather conditions are going to be for Santa. Sometimes they're very tough, sometimes it's snowing, sometimes there's storms even, but generally they're able to assure us that the way is open for Santa to get there as usual. So you keep an eye on the news just to be absolutely sure. Here is one of Ireland's favourite newscasters, Evelyn Cusack, who was interviewed back in 2015 in that same report.
Roger, I have radar contact with Santa Claus.
Santa's journey is being monitored by the Air Corps, and with clear weather expected, Santa should arrive early this year.
Thankfully, no problems from the weather across Ireland tonight. A beautiful, clear night, twinkling stars. But because of this, with excellent visibility, I really would advise the boys and girls to get to bed as early as possible because you can see through the windows,
So, close up those curtains, tuck up tight in your bed. Santa could reach Ireland soon after he makes his way through the deep snows of the North Pole. Cian McCormack, RTE News.
Okay, did you say you had a Christmassy story?
I do, yes, Tim. I was actually, now usually my beat is more sort of politics and international affairs and so on, but I did have a Santa-related story this year, which I went to report on in Brussels, which was really delightful. So my story was all about the Brussels Gaeltacht, so the community of people who are in Brussels who are Irish-speaking. Just about, who they are, why this has grown, why there are more Irish speakers in Brussels. It's a subject we've talked about on the podcast before, actually. But as part of my reporting, I was very privileged to be invited to the visit of Daddy na Nollaig, of Father Christmas, in the home of one of the sort of linchpins of the community, who's a translator in the European Commission. It was very exciting. So I went along to the house. It was like a terraced home in Brussels, and I was welcomed inside. There was a bit of a false alarm because people were expecting Daddy na Nollaig to arrive, and then suddenly it was me at the door. So people were saying, "On will to Daddy na Nollaig," and I it had to be no. It wasn't me. So I was slight disappointment on entry.
Sure.
But no, everyone was very welcoming. There were, snacks handed round, a table heaving with food, very cozy. And inside were, I think, how many families did I count? 5 or 6 families with maybe 10 children, something like that. All Irish-speaking, completely Irish-speaking environment. Very excited little children, mostly between the ages of, let's say, 1 and 4, gathered around the Christmas tree. Fantastic. And some of the stockings were up there.
Very lucky.
Waiting for, the visit. Yeah. It was really interesting, actually, to see how people, how they really were being raised completely in the Irish language. Like, for example, the Irish language television TJ Cahir was playing. All of the stockings were written on in Irish. So they said, Nollaig and stuff on them. All the children's books were in Irish. There was the Irish version of the Gruffalo, for example.
Lovely.
And it was really just, totally Irish-speaking environment that had been created there. The reason these families know each other, by the way, is because the mammy of the house, Aisling, she actually organised an Irish language playgroup for all of these families that are raising their children through Irish so that they can interact with other little children of their own age in the language that they use at home. So anyway, really great.
Yeah, right.
So we were all waiting in great expectation. The tension was rising, and suddenly a bell was heard from outside on the street.
Oh my God.
Yes, a bell was ringing, and the children knew what that meant. So they leapt up like shrieking and ran to the door to see who was there. And in came the man himself. It was Daddy Nollaig.
Oh my God.
Yeah, fantastic. Big white beard, big black boots, big black belt, and ho, 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 he said as he came in. And as it turns out, Tim, I didn't realise this, but Santa turns out to be a fluent Gaeilgeoir.
Oh, well, that doesn't surprise me, Naomi, because, surely Santa speaks all the languages in the world, because otherwise, logistically, right, how are you going to get your job done otherwise? It's kind of part of the job, surely, right?
I guess I just never thought about it. But here he was, greeting all the children, very friendly. He speaks Irish with a northern accent, northern dialect. And
good choice.
Yes. So in he came with his sack of presents, and he sat down in an armchair in the front room. And one by one, he had a little chat with each child and gave them a little bit of little chocolate, a little present. And it was lovely. And then they all sang carols together, all the hits, Jingle Bells. But of course, it's not Jingle Bells. It's called Bula Bus, Bula Bus, Bula Bus, Léir. I don't know if you remember that one, Tim, from your childhood, but... Yeah,
I don't know, but for international listeners, that translates to clap your hands, everyone clap your hands. So I bet there's a bit of a dance that goes with it.
Probably. They had Bula Bus, Iha Cún, which is Silent Night. I don't know if you sang any of these ones.
I'm sure I did.
And I think it's on Dromedoreen, which is the little drummer boy. It's the one that goes Parumpa Pum Pum. Do you know that one?
Right.
Anyway, so
80s hit.
All the classics, As Gaeilge, and Santa sang them together with the children. And they did do a little dance, now that I think about it. And one of the dads accompanied the carols on the piano. Yeah, so a great time was had by all. And then Santa went off into the night to one of his other appointments. Busy man.
I bet. Wasn't it very good of him to spend that time? I mean, considering how busy, seriously, he's got to be at this time of year. That's a significant chunk of time to take out of his day.
It was very good. And I think it reflects, what a great job these parents are doing, making such an effort for their children and creating this play group and, this whole wonderful environment for children to learn in. And fantastic, fair play to them.
Absolutely.
And thanks for the hospitality.
Not to mention that the time that must have gone into organising that visit on the phone to Lapland, I'm sure, all kinds of things going on there in the background. So Bula Bus to that group.
Yeah,
absolutely. You didn't get to ask the man himself for a PlayStation or something nice from under the tree.
I should have chanced my arm, shouldn't I? Yes, I should have chanced my arm. That would have been good.
You probably should.
Yeah, I should have.
That's the moment.
What I should have asked for, Tim, is I should have asked for a phone, because I was actually hoping to go along, get some nice videos, maybe get some audio. But strange happening befell me, and literally as I was just about to leave to go to the place, my phone died completely. So I went there with nothing more than a notepad and pen to write down what I saw and relate it to you and the listeners. So, here we are.
Old school.
Yeah.
Old school. That might have been an overdose of electric magic in the air, like that's a lot of intense,
You're right.
a lot of intense magic going around.
Maybe that's what was going on.
A bit too much for your phone.
Maybe that's what it was.
I hope it was time for an update anyway. Sounds like it might have been.
It must have been, Tim, yeah. Yeah.
Well, listen, we said this was just a mini episode. We just wanted to bring you this important news and, to let you know that we're on it as well. The Irish Passport is doing its bit for just keeping track of what the latest news is about Santa's visit.
Yep.
And before we let you go, however, we do need to give a shout out to, I think, who might be one of our youngest listeners.
Oh.
So this shout out comes in from Rachel in London. And Rachel wants to say a big, big, big happy holidays to baby Arlo,
Aww.
who loves to listen to the Irish Passport while he's practicing his walking, which I think is an absolutely great soundtrack if you're learning to walk.
Oh,
if you ask
how
me.
cute.
So Nollaig to Arlo and a happy new year to the whole family. And thanks so much for supporting the podcast as they do. And if you want to support the podcast, listeners out there, you can find out all the ways that you can help to keep us running by going over to www.patreon.com/The Irish Passport. And depending on the tier that you sign up to, you can send us in a listener question or get your own very own shout out on one of our episodes.
Nollaig Díobh go léir.
Nollaig from me as well. Ho, 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 ho. And off we go until the new year. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye. It's all for now.